Somebody tell me, those that were here last week, tell me what last week's message was about. Test time, test time. I didn't do a very good job.
It was about God.
It was about God.
The Bible, came out of the Bible.
What about if I give you one word? Maybe that'll give you a hint. Anyone? That didn't ring a bell either.
Doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, anything, you can just say.
Take up your cross and follow him.
Thank you, brother. Luke 9:23. That's where we preach from. So turn back to Luke 9:23. We'll preach that sermon again since we didn't get through.
You still asking us if we were found to follow.
What did I tell you about anyone? Anyone?
Well, if he could save Matthew, weren't Matthew the really bad guy you talked about?
I don't know. You tell me.
The tax collector?
If we can say
Am I wrong?
Yeah, we're finally getting around to it. I'll get there. We said anyone. If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me. We said that, and I'm not going to preach it over again now.
You also said we decided to follow, but where? Now we've,
No, we're taking notes and now we're getting
yeah.
it. Good.
When you said no, I went to Luke, that then I found my bulletin.
So just a quick rehash on the word anyone. As Scarlett said, anyone means anyone. Regardless of social status, regardless of background, regardless of what you've done, regardless of what you're doing. When Christ says anyone, he means anyone. No prerequisites, no list of requirements you've got to do or meet prior to coming to him. Anyone does mean anyone. So once again, 9:23, chapter Luke 9:23. Anyone would come after me must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Now what I want to focus on this morning is two words. Come after. Come after. We talked about anyone last week, if anyone. But now, we come after. That's a phrase that in this particular era was commonly used in the context of a romantic relationship. So when Jesus says, come after, he's describing this passionate pursuit of someone that you love. So the best way to understand what Jesus is wanting from us as followers is to compare how we would pursue someone that we want to have a romantic relationship with, or had one if you were old enough that that's where we're at today. The pursuit of a romantic relationship can consume our thoughts, our resources, and our energy. And that's what Christ is trying to get across to us when he says, come after me. We know that pursuing love has been the subject of numerous books, inspired works of poetry and art, the plot of several movies, and innumerable amount of songs. Pursuing love. Pursuing love makes people do crazy things. I'm sure that if we were to take the time this morning that each one of you could tell me some things that you did while pursuing a romantic relationship that if we look back on it now, we'd say, man, that was crazy. Some of you are already laughing. But I wonder this morning, and I'll present it to you. I just wonder this morning, if we have those stories, how many of us also can tell a story about something crazy we did in pursuing our relationship with Christ? That puts a little different spin on things, doesn't it? Now, each one of you can, I'm sure, give me a story of something crazy you did when you were pursuing a romantic relationship. But how many stories do we have about chasing after Christ? Followers of Christ should have some come after stories to tell about their relationship with Christ. We ought to have some come after stories that people, when we tell them that, or when they hear these stories, say, that's crazy. And you did that, that was crazy. But many fans didn't grow up or don't grow up thinking about their relationship with Jesus in those terms. Following him is more of a weekend thing. In other words, we'll just do it during the weekend, but we won't get too carried away with it. In other words, they'll put in a few dollars into the offering plate. They may even volunteer to hand out the bulletins at the front door. But that's about the extent of their relationship with Christ. But that's not how Christ has defined the relationship that he wants us to have with him. Jesus wants us to understand that following him is a pursuit that requires something from us. It requires something from us. Jesus tells about a parable in Matthew chapter 13 that's called the Pearl of Great Price. I preached a sermon on this years ago. But it gives us a picture of what Jesus had in mind when he invited us to come after him.
Amen.
And it's just one verse, and you don't have to turn there unless you want. Matthew 13:44. It says, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all that he had and bought that field. You see, in those times, people would often bury their savings in the ground because it was considered a safe place, especially during times of war. That might be where we need to bury it today. It might be as safe as any place, I don't know. It's a different story for a different time, though. So it wouldn't have been uncommon for someone to have buried their treasure in the ground and then they went off to war and were killed in the war. So Jesus is describing that scenario where years later this hired hand has discovered a buried treasure while he's plowing, working in the field. When he finds it, he stops, he digs it up, he uncovers it, he brushes it off and opens it up, and he can't believe his eyes. Inside of this, whether it be a box or some sort of a pottery jar or some sort of skin, we don't know, it doesn't matter. But at any rate, when he opens it up, he finds several $100s worth of jewels or monies or whatever the case, something expensive that gets him excited. His heart starts pounding. He's so excited about what he's found. But he quickly reburies this treasure, covers it back up, and continues his work. But I can only imagine that while he's continuing to work, his mind is just working up. How he can go back and reclaim this, how he can buy this field or whatever it is that he has to do so that this field, this treasure, can be his. And he sells everything. He sells his house, he sells his oxen, he sells his cart. And his friends and his family begin to talk. They think that he's lost his mind. Why is he selling everything that he's got? It just doesn't make any sense. But the truth is, this is probably the best investment that he could ever possibly make. When we discover the life that we can have in Jesus, we are to come after him like this man pursued this treasure, this pearl of great price, if you will. When we find out how God can meet a need in our life, how he can always supply the need in our lives, we realize that that's the life that Jesus wants us to have, or the relationship we want to have with him. When we find out that Jesus cares enough about us that he can lead us to a lost class ring, we understand that that's the kind of relationship that God wants us to have with him. So, the difference between fans and followers are this. Fans don't get too excited and they don't get too carried away with something like that. But followers understand that following Jesus is a pursuit that may cost them something. But at the same time that it will be the very best investment that they could ever make if we have to give up something in following Christ. Followers will do some crazy things for love, of course the love of God. But fans want to play it safe. They don't want to get in too deep to where it's going to cost them anything. There's a fear among fans, if you will, that by getting all in, by going all the way with our relationship with Christ, that we're going to miss out on something. If I just jump in wholeheartedly in this relationship that Jesus wants me to have with Him, it's going to cost me something. It's going to cost me my friends. It's going to cost me this. It may cost you those people that you call your friends, but they're not really your friends if they're going to forsake you for pursuing something better in your life. Fans want to have just enough of the pleasure without having to risk feeling any pain, if you will. In other words, we want to enjoy what's available to us without having to sacrifice for it. And isn't that the nature of man to start with? We'd all like to have the benefits. We'd all like to reap the benefits of something without it costing us anything. That's not what Christ says has to happen here. Instead of having those come after moments, we have the hold back moments. Oh, I'm not going to let God, I'm not going that far. I'm not going to step over the line. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to hold back. And you know, it's not that we don't want a relationship with Jesus. We do. We just want it not to cost us very much. Sister Deborah, you got a little one at the door there. I think they're looking for Mom or Grandma. Again, it's not that we don't want a relationship with Jesus. We do. We just don't want very much to be required of us. If we go back to the romance metaphor, it's like a man and a woman who have been dating for years. And after a while, things become serious and the woman wants to get married. Well, the man loves her. He doesn't want to lose her. But he's afraid that if he makes that kind of commitment, it's going to require too much of him. Or it's going to somehow, he's going to miss out on something better if he makes that final commitment and marries this woman. She makes the suggestion. He does. He makes the suggestion, well, why don't we just move in together? Now, if we could translate that into modern everyday language, it would come out, how about if we have all the benefits of marriage, but without any commitments that goes along with it? Preacher's meddling this morning, getting too serious here. But you know, that's the approach that so many people take with their relationship with Jesus. Fans will tell Jesus, well, why don't we just move in together? How do we do that? Well, let me give you an example. Something I read a while back, a suggested vow that unmarried couples living together make. Now, we know that when we get married, you exchange vows. Well, here's a suggested vow that unmarried couples would say. It goes like this. I, John, take you, Mary, to be my cohabitant, to have sex with, and to share meals with. I'll be around while things are good, but I probably won't be if things get tough. If you should get a cold, I'll run to the drugstore for some medicine. If you get sick to the point where you can no longer meet my needs, then I'll have to move on. Forsaking many others, I will be more or less faithful to you as long as it feels good to me. If we break up, it doesn't mean that this wasn't special to me. I commit to live with you for as long as this works out. Well, unfortunately, that's where a lot of marriages go now. Not only unmarried couples, but married couples as well. But we don't want to stay there. We don't want to camp in that area. We're trying to put this in a metaphor with our relationship with Jesus Christ.